So think about it. It's 1937. Amelia Earhart is the world's most famous aviatrix. She's done more than anybody else in terms of female flying. She was the first passenger on a flight across the Atlantic. She was the highest and fastest flyer of any woman. And when she flew across the Atlantic solo, she became the female Charles Lindbergh. Then on July 2nd, her plane disappeared, never to be heard from again, 3/4 of the way through her famous flight around the world. Now, what was fascinating about Amelia Earhart was that 2 years ago, I'm watching TV with my sons, and this woman comes on TV and she says, "My name is Amelia Earhart, and I have just finished flying around the world." And I thought, that's crazy. Why is there another Amelia Earhart who flew around the world? And she explained that her parents gave her the name Amelia Earhart to give her a strong role model, to give her a name no one would forget. And they also said she was a distant relative of Amelia Earhart's. Now, it must have been really hard to grow up with the name Amelia Earhart. If I was named Charles Lindbergh, I'd imagine everybody would say to me like, "Hey, you've done a lot of flying recently, you've gone solo around across the Atlantic." And I would, kind of look at them and say, "Ha, that's funny. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before." No, I'm Charles Lindbergh, the dentist. And I started thinking about people who had strange names, and how people have these different unusual names, like James Bond, or Paul and Linda McCartney, or Harry Potter. And you know that Harry Potter was Harold Potter or Harry Potter, and he's 40 years old, living his life in England. All of a sudden, J.K. Rowling comes up with these crazy wizards doing this stuff. And now every time he goes to rent a movie, everybody laughs at him. So, but it's one thing to be named Harry Potter and not realize what you were getting into. It's a different story for Donald Duck Jr. Because Donald Duck Jr., when he was dating his future wife, said, "Don't marry me if you don't want our first son to be named Donald Duck III." So this brings me back to Amelia Earhart. You have a woman where people are constantly asking her, "Are you a pilot? Are you going to fly around the world?" So eventually in 2004, she took her first flying lesson. And in 2011, she realized with a name like Amelia Earhart, she could get sponsors. She could make this a public kind of crazy effort. She could also help other women learn to fly and raise money for that. So she started planning this flight around the world, and in 2014 completed the flight. So she's really building on the legacy of the original Amelia Earhart. A lot of people will say, "But you just have the name. Aren't you taking advantage of this name? Is that really fair?" But if you think about it, both Amelias really inspired women to achieve the impossible. The original Amelia Earhart, yeah, she was a pilot, but she was also a woman pioneer. She was a very early feminist. Both Amelias used the media for publicity and to finance the trips. It's not that the original Amelia Earhart just sort of said, "No, I don't want any of that publicity." She took it on. She thought this was really important. And then what was incredible was Amelia Rose Earhart in the flight around the world. At the point when Amelia Earhart disappeared over Howland Island, gave away $120,000 of scholarships to 16 and 18-year-old women who wanted to learn how to fly. And it was amazing. And then to pull this all together, Amelia Rose Earhart earned the Amelia Earhart Pioneering Achievement Award. So Amelia Earhart won the Amelia Earhart Award, which is just lovely. So I find Amelia Earhart incredibly inspiring. She's obviously the heir to the original Amelia Earhart. She's, related to Amelia Earhart, except that I didn't tell you that she's actually not related to the original Amelia Earhart. About a year before she took off on the flight, people were saying, "How exactly are you related?" So she got a genealogy done and found out that she's not at all related to Amelia Earhart. And she was devastated. It was horrible because this was her life. This was what she was doing. But then she thought about it and she realized that the original Amelia Earhart got her half of the way on this journey. She got her inspired to fly. She realized she loved to fly. She got her to think about this flight around the world and plan this flight around the world. But she, Amelia Rose Earhart, needed to complete this journey herself. And what I find so inspiring about Amelia Earhart is that everyone is born with gifts and challenges. And sometimes these what you thought was a gift turns into a challenge, and sometimes you think what you thought was a challenge turned into a gift. But the real test of a person is to how you use your gifts and how you overcome these challenges. So Amelia Earhart took on the challenge of this unusual name to inspire others, to help women become pilots. And then she completed the flight that the original Amelia Earhart started 77 years earlier.